Picture what it will do to the logistic flow. Being able to not only see a single ship and its real-time ETA and geographical position along its route, but the whole chain, from land to sea and back to land again, and every ship it contains. Seeing the bigger picture also helps ensuring safety, avoiding accidents. So what about all the captains out there? They will love it. Finally, a community where reporting will be minimized and information can flow free between ships. And they will still be in command.
Huh, it's like Facebook for seafarers.
No, like the whole darn internet. We are now on the verge of launching a new project that will sustain the concept of sea traffic management. This project will have a larger impact, more partners, bigger test beds, bigger budgets. It will validate the concept to ease the implementation so that we can finally go to work. So this is where we're at now. But the fun of realizing all this still lies ahead of us. Until I see you again, take comfort in knowing that we keep working. Because in this world, we need safe systems, good sailors, and sturdy ships. Au revoir, auf Wiedersehen.
Here's some of the partners. It's growing, growing. And at our final conference in Gothenburg for the MoS 2.0, we had about, I think it was more than 200 visitors. And 30% of them was not from the shipping industry. They came from other kind of industry, the digital world, IBM, all those kinds of, because they understand now that the business models are changing. So back to the question, what are you going to do about it? This is changing. So that is all for me. Thank you very much. Make sure question. Yeah.
Of the MoS project.
Yes, the idea comes from Marlies. Marlies was the main influence for us.
I was at the MoS.
Yeah, yes, that was one of our main.
Very familiar.
Yeah. It's all coming from Marlies. So thank you, Colin.
Right, Ulf will nominate that for an Oscar and move on to Demetrius Laridis on MoS.
Good afternoon, everybody. I really hate this afternoon presentations because I'm the first one to sleep. But in any case, let's try and I will have a brief overview of the MoS project, MoS 2 project, and I will also give a few suggestions for the detailed implementation plan. Most of these have come out as a result of the MoS project and as a result of personal experience. So I will first discuss a little bit the justification of the project, see what it has done, and we'll see how it ended. I have a few statistics here that are a bit old, but they demonstrate what you already know, the importance of the shipping industry, the total economic impact in Europe. So we're talking about an industry that employs about 2 million people and contributes about 145 billion in general to GDP. Direct, indirect, and induced spending, let's say, by the people who work in the industry. We're also talking about an industry that, approximately the same numbers, but that grows year after year despite the crisis. this is the economic value of shipping. Part of shipping, or let's say adjacent to shipping, are ports. The statistics may be a little bit older, but they are very much representative of the amount of investment by the EU and the amount of impact it has in terms of employment in the EU and in the economy. So we're talking about an environment that is central to the European economy. And now I have to go back to, let's say, the Greek Aristotle philosopher that said that all this to work, and in order to bring happiness and flourishing somewhere, we need to have both theoretical and practical wisdom. And I think this is one of the reasons why training and education is central to any industry. Of course, also, if you want to be a bit more formal, according to industrial clusters, you need to have the industry, you need to have the state, and you also need to have education, which is the source of innovation in the industry, which makes the industry sustainable. So education is very important. Of course, education, and because of the market needs and the employment models, it changes all the time. So if we think of the European education in years 2020, we need to think how it will evolve. Professional and vocational training will become even more important. There is a talent shortage in the industry, especially in the shipping industry, and there is also a demand for new technical competencies. We feel that the university model as we know it is not sufficient, and it needs to coexist with flexible learning environments and hubs. This was the main justification behind the global project, the global training project that was instigated essentially by a need of motorways of the sea, having an aim to establish a new maritime and logistics platform that addresses the formation, the education of human element. It needed to be complete, updated, and it needed to provide innovative tools in order to address the different stakeholder needs. So Train MoS tried to build upon the knowledge that has been generated by other previous projects, and deliver new contexts that were not available in the market at the time, contents that we felt and were derived by the needs of the market, needed to be offered in different levels: postgraduate courses, professional training, and vocational training. Its second important aim is to use and improve existing IT tools in order to bridge the gap between demand and offer of training and jobs. It also took into consideration challenges that were identified in the European maritime area, and tried to cover topics that were not available at the time or were not properly addressed in various fora. We built a consortium which was coordinated by the University of Strathclyde that included 6 universities, included 2 training centers, 2 end users, and 1 IT provider that built the platform. And this consortium together built a set of courses that we will see later. The main activities of Train MoS has been, in order to, let's say, make it a bit more clear, one important activity was the first one that wanted to establish what is the baseline in terms of training needs, and what is the requirements in terms of courses and content. The second activity was to produce the training modules that were appropriate, that were needed to answer these needs. Then improve the IT platform of knowledge, and of course we needed to disseminate and communicate the results and the achievements of the project so that it has a future, it becomes sustainable. The target groups identified were mainly 2, were postgraduates, students that have already graduated, and professionals from different sectors in the multimodal transport chain. And in order to cover the needs generated by our market assessment, it was necessary to include exactly 3 different levels of training, both education at a higher level and professional and vocational training. The major topics that were addressed in this series of programs were alternative fuels like LNG and LPG, biodiesel, hydrogen, even scrubbers at the time were quite in fashion. We addressed logistics issues and specifically the potential and challenges created by the single window directive. We addressed issues for training in damage control, and this is a picture that you've already seen, but training not only for the crew, but also for firefighters, for mariners in the fisheries and merchant, in the merchant profession, based on lessons that were learned from Navy operations. Also, we took into account the IMO return to port concept. And the final activity was the evacuation and crisis management operations for very large passenger vessels on the vessels with impact to the port. The aim was to address also risk scenarios that included flood, fire, oil spills, terrorist threats, etc. Training. The MSc course, which was the highest level course, addressed a few issues that you can see here, like maritime sustainability and motorways of the sea, port planning, infrastructure management and alternative fuels, risk-based methods for new technologies, port energy operations, safe energy and energy efficient operation in ships, and alternative fuels in the common European transport space. For the continuous professional development courses, the aim was, again, maritime sustainability and energy savings, modern logistics networks, fueled by alternative energy sources, logistics issues and the single window directive, safe return to port, crisis management, and elements of maritime and intermodal transport management. So these modules had a different content depending on the level of education. For example, I have included 2 or 3 of those for your information. For maritime sustainability and energy savings, we saw issues of sustainable development, clean and sustainable transport systems, external cost of transport. I do not really want to go through all the issues addressed, but all these issues have been addressed, and a training content for these themes is already in place. For port planning, similarly, in infrastructure management and alternative fuel supply chain, we discussed the evolution of energy consumption, new concepts in ports planning, strategic and technical challenges of LNG solutions like supply chain for LNG, the hub and spoke system for the supply, transportation and storage, LNG storage facilities, creation of an LNG bunkering network, and many other issues related both to LNG and other alternative fuels. And for damage control, similarly, we had 5 different modules for fire prevention, ship simulator and bridge teamwork, proficiency in efficiency in crisis management, cargo safety, advanced training, and firefighting. So these were issues that were addressed. In terms of actual participation, for example, in one of the modules, I have the statistics for all of them, but I do not need to show it to you. We had 5 lectures involved for evacuation operations management. 15 students participated. They had an engineering background or already a master's degree. And for the course, we had almost 17 hours of video recordings and a lot of gigabytes of material produced that are stored on the MoS Way platform, adapted to train MoS 2. But I do not want to go into detail in this because later you will hear about this a little bit more. Here we have some pictures of some of the classes, and the coordinator really likes himself. He also has a profile similar to Jose, so he puts his picture everywhere. But it was quite a successful event. We also had a very positive feedback from the people that participated, quite enthusiastic actually. And all the statistics and the results are available. The conclusions. We identified the training needs and gaps in issues related to motorways of the sea. we developed a specific tool that could match demand and offer of jobs regarding to training in the maritime logistics sector. We try to develop training and education at various levels. We developed full-scale applied programs and a European-wide MSc program that is ready to be there because an agreement has been signed by the universities, most universities that have participated, to give an MSc degree on training and education. There was developed a system of mutual credit recognition by the various participants. We have produced training modules and experiences that are already stored in the portal, accessible freely to everybody, on the MoS Way platform. And of course, a large part of the program was the extension of the On the MoS Way platform to accommodate for this new information. But for me, as I said earlier, the biggest conclusion, the biggest contribution of the TrainMoS project is that it made motorways of the sea known to a larger community that was already that did not already participate in the small circle of shipping, and additional students, especially the MSc program, made it attractive to new students and made the notions known to a larger cycle. And this was reflected also in the amount and the qualifications of the students that were that participated in the project. As a result of the TrainMoS project, and as a result of the various discussions and also my personal experience, there are quite a few challenges to be met in terms of training and the human factor. It is true that there are still training gaps. For example, the new STCW requirements about the electrically trained officers. There exist new specialties, there are new training needs. We saw earlier a new, or let's say more advanced navigation scheme, and I can go even further, and I can also suggest that a Eurocontrol type navigation center is installed in Europe. This will require new training new training material that does not exist nowadays, and we have to see a little bit in the future. We need to see the training needs in a more global perspective, and this demonstrates, this reveals training that is not there yet, but will be needed in the future. For example, there will be needed training for search and rescue for specific categories like immigrants that have a completely different response to rescue than seafarers or people on a cruise ship. We need to train also for the digital era. It has been discussed many times. There are advances in logistics. One very important idea to keep in mind is that the very training fabric has changed in the recent years. So it requires a new training. And what I mean is the following. We have these ships that are fully automated. People learn how to push a button and produce a reaction. However, we don't know now very much what this button does. It's as if you take a picture with your iPhone. You just press a button and the iPhone makes a picture, but you have forgotten what the shutter and the speed really does. In an emergency, however, when these things fall apart, then you need to know exactly what is the procedure behind this automation. This is a very important factor, and this has to be taken into account during training. We need also to take account of interdisciplinary training. That is, somebody who is a captain on a ship needs also to have legal knowledge. There are other issues that need to be known in parallel to the actual maritime skills required. And of course, we need to learn people who do the training how to do it. Training and education is an art, but it can't be taught, it can't be learned, it can be learned, and it has to be, and people have to be trained for this. Another challenge is sharing and pooling of resources available, let's say, European-wide. There has been an attempt in the Mona Lisa project for pooling simulators. It was successful as far as I know, but this need to be addressed, need to be promoted. The employment hub platform needs to be promoted and needs to be extended. We need to create, I feel, a database of maritime professionals in an effort to balance demand and supply in a more European-wide scale. We need to assure the harmonization of requirements for maritime professional training. STCW does a good job, but there can be also guidelines that promote more the quality of training. We also need to promote the retraining of workers from other professions that have the ability, they're upskilled workers, but need to change a job or have been unemployed for some time. They need to be retrained. I also feel, as in terms of policy, that there has to be sought this overview and this integration with synergies from other areas like the blue activities, where they also do a lot of training and promotion of the maritime profession. And finally, one very important aspect of training for me is training for non-technical skills. It has been observed also in other industries, and it has been recognized by STCW since 1995, that non-technical skills are very important in human factors. It's not enough to train somebody for the specific maritime tasks, but they also need to learn how to work as a team, how to show leadership, how to make quick decisions, how to deal with stress, how to be prepared for unexpected cases, for unexpected events. They need to learn how to deal with stress, and they need to be trained for this. One other important aspect that is apparent, but it has been proven by the same program we did. Language is still a barrier, and especially in shipping, language is very important because people who speak proper English cannot communicate with seafarers. People are required to learn shipping English. And this reminds me of the joke with the ship sinking outside Germany, and the Mayday signal that says that's sent out, and they said, "We're sinking, we're sinking." And the response from the German tower was, "What are you thinking about?" So language is also a very important tool. We need to identify what are the non-technical skills in the maritime profession, and those need to be identified, trained, and validated. I think the maritime profession, I'm also part of the National Council for the Nautical Education, and I know the various institutions like the Union of Greek Ship Owners. They spend a lot of money every year in sponsoring nautical education in Greece. Still, it's not important, it's not easy to attract people to the profession, and that's why I said attract is not the right word, inspire people is the appropriate word. And training is also for the people who will do the marketing, which better marketing is needed. Training is central. I would like to thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dimitrios.
Election needs to present a small training model.
All right.
Just good afternoon. Just to add what Dimitrios was presenting, I would like to take the opportunity to present you. If this is working first. The portal about motorway of the sea that was created in TREMOS 1 and TREMOS 2. And now it is part of as a communication tool, is part of the package that is included in the detailing presentation plan. It seems that it's not working, so it's going to be another time because it was needed the password this morning, now it is needed, so we don't know why. Kruchi, you know why now they are asking for a password? Sorry, so the issue is that we created this portal included in TREMOS 1 and TREMOS 2. The idea was to have a focal point in which all the topics about transport, maritime transport and logistics are covered from the motorway of the sea perspective. We have a number of information already there. Specifically, we have linked to TrainMoS 1 and 2. We have all the materials and the videos about the different training courses that has been delivered in TrainMoS 1 and TrainMoS 2. So everything is available there. It's not working anymore. Fine, that's digitalization again.
Yeah, the human factor,
It's the
you
human
know.
factor that is always a factor. Okay, fine. What is important is that you can find a number of information. You can follow the courses there. You can follow also the registered video of the two fora we had yesterday and we are having today. And you are more than welcome to contribute to those platforms with news about your projects, your initiatives. That is a little bit linked to what Helen was saying this morning, because the figures that Helen was presenting in terms of potential people to be reached by this platform are definitely really bigger than obviously fora like those ones that we are doing. So it's quite important that, and we are using those platforms also to interact with a number of stakeholders. Just to give you a final number, we have a newsletter that is sent to more than 2,500 people, selected and classified stakeholders. They are all motorway of the sea, let's say, stakeholders. So they are informed what we are doing, they can follow. Obviously they are quite welcome to react and interact with us. And that's quite important, because it's not only, we are living in a digital world, so it's important to have also digital communication tools to support what Brian is doing and supporting the detailed implementation plan and so on. So sorry for that, but it was working this morning, it's not anymore working now, so sorry about that, and thanks, Brian.
All right. Sonka, you're next.
Yeah, Sophia is right. I forget to say that there is also a full package on LNG there, about LNG training. That it was partly part of a TrainMoS, a part of another project focused on LNG. There is a full knowledge center on LNG, so with a lot of information you can find there. Thanks, thanks, Sophia.
Okay, now my turn. I'm Sönke Maat from ICL. I also go to the front. I hope everyone can hear me. I'm part of the consortium supporting the Commission of developing a detailed implementation plan. And I want to say a few words about first the methodology we are using, and then also show you some results from the first step of data analysis, which may be interesting in wrapping up where we are today as regards motorways and now the maritime links in general. So as I said, first some words on the general approach. How are we going to develop or support the Commission in developing the priorities for the next big implementation plan? And here I'm focusing on the database support. The aim of the project, is, as I said, to support the Commission in identifying and developing priorities. There is a preliminary list of options on the table, or like evolving, and the forum we have organized, this is the third forum now. Of course, part of it we're collecting input from past projects, from the programs themselves, from the regulations, and of course from the stakeholders. And from that, we will have a list of options and possibilities in these different pillars of the program, which is in the third part, in which we are discussing today, human element safety and traffic management. So for each of these development options, it's mostly easier to understand when you look at the more technical things like the scrubber installations, the integration of maritime transport and logistics chains. When you talk about infrastructure, you're looking at some sort of benchmarks, some sort of top performers, or some political aims that we want more LNG-ready ships, we want more LNG supply points in the ports. So we look at the status quo, and then we compare it with the aim set for a certain topic or field. And from that we can measure in a way the adequacy. So how far are we from the objective? Is there still a long way to go or not? So we find, so we can measure in a way the adequacy with regard to one of the options we're looking at. First question, of course, is where to measure adequacy in the motorways to sea context. Somebody press the... Oh, now it's working. For motorways of the sea, we're of course looking at links between ports. That's the definition. But we're not only looking at the links, so the ships and ship routes, but we're also looking at the port access, the terminals, and also the connection, say, within the port to the hinterland, logistics centers, rail terminals, the connections to the rail terminal, and a way then to the corridors, which the land corridors, which are of course not part of the motorways of the sea, but we need to connect to them to have a functioning logistics chain. So first we look at the adequacy of the links in the context of safety, human element, and traffic management. This could, for example, be safety standards for ships, which already exist, the training of seafarers, and with everything that is connected with the ships and the sea routes, and also, of course, vessel traffic management systems are in that part. Then we have the adequacy of the port approach. So when you're in the port, of course, there's also vessel traffic management systems there. You have the draught, you have the navigability, and connect with navigability the need for pilotage or not, and the existence of pilotage and how it's organized. You have the safety of cargo and passenger operations, so that's on the terminals. We heard about cruise passengers, but there are also accidents, fatal accidents also on container terminals, other cargo terminals, and especially if you think about dangerous goods, not only human casualty, but also, of course, environmental risk involved in that. And finally, we have the adequacy of the internet connection, so not speaking about the internet itself, but within the port, for example, the traffic management of in the port vicinity, truck operations, pre-appointment systems, things like that. So once again, how are we going to measure adequacy? It always depends on which option, which development priority you're looking at. Adequate means appropriate with regard to benchmark goals. So first you have to set an objective, and then you can see where the status quo is with regard to that objective. What's really important here is that we need reliable data which is comparable and neutral for all ports, all links, which is especially complicated, of course, in say this pillar we are currently looking at. But for example, you can define key performance indicators, is there VTMS, certain safety standards, are they met, but then also more quantitative standards, of course, training and the like. We have heard a lot of ideas today. What can be done in ports and on the ship side. And you also have to keep in mind that not all the ports and not all the ship routes have the same needs. For example, you may have very complex ports with a lot of ship calls with different cargo types, dangerous goods, LNG, and so on and so forth, which of course give much more need for traffic management and safety of shipping than a rural port with just one terminal. So it's always important to keep in mind that the objective may not be the same for every port or every day. Then when you have these groups, then within the groups you can identify top performers. You can maybe there were already pilot studies, maybe there are innovative systems in some of the ports. So you can look at what's going on in these say benchmark ports or on these benchmark ships, and identify standards, identify objectives that they serve also as examples for other ports. And then you compare what's going on in the other ports. Are they far away? Maybe they've already developed similar systems. And by doing this comparison, you can find out whether the adequacy with regard to that benchmark is high. So many ports have already established such systems. There's already a common knowledge, even if some single ports may still not have introduced and implemented such systems, but the knowledge is there, they can do it easily. So maybe this is no longer a priority in the horizontal sense for all the ports in Europe, but more or less a priority for implementation in single ports. On the other hand, if you see that there are some very good ideas, but it's just very little ports having introduced such systems, then of course this could be a new idea, something to push forward within the MoS program. So a few words, a few data-based words on the diversity we have in the European port landscape and also in regarding maritime links. This is the map we have drawn from AIS data, actually, from satellite AIS data, showing the routes with the highest traffic density and the most important ship routes in Europe. You can see that they are basically going along the coasts of Europe. So all the ports that one of the routes, of course, the traffic density is not the same everywhere, but all ports in Europe are, of course, connected to these major routes, and there are probably routes nearby. In total, we have 3.6 billion tons of traffic in Europe in 2014, of which 2.2 billion tons, so more than half of it, were traffic between two European ports. This includes also feeder traffic, so some of that is deep sea cargo, but the